Hey everyone. You know, even though I didn't really watch Lucha Underground as much as I should have this year, there were times that I did catch several episodes on demand, and I even watched the majority of Ultimate Lucha Part 2. I didn't see Part 1 yet, but I did see Part 2. Yesterday, the only match I haven't seen yet on Part 2 is Mil Muertes and Prince Puma. Now, I am going to watch Part 1 as well. I think what I'm going to do, possibly, if it's still on demand, is record Part 1, pause it, and then record Part 2. And I will admit with a lot of people one thing. I would watch some of the highlights that they would do on Facebook. Heck, Lucha Underground, I will give them credit, is the only promotion so far that if you missed a match, they will put that match on in its entirety on the freaking Facebook page. Or even the YouTube page or whatever. That is saying something about a promotion who knows that if it wants to stick around and has the fan base that it has, that it needs to do something like this. Because obviously they know nobody really has the El Rey Network. It's kind of like, El Rey Network, it's not on par. Well, let's put it this way. El Rey Network, I'll put it this way. It's not like Destination America, because at least it's in more homes than Destination America is. But they also realize that even though they're in more cable homes, they're in more homes across the globe, or across the nation, they realize, though, there's still people that may not have El Rey Network as part of their package. So they realize that if people hear about this and they want to see these matches, that through Facebook and YouTube they can do that. Heck, even people are uploading episodes of Lucha Underground on YouTube and Daily Motion, all due to the fact that not many people have El Rey Network. Same way people do the same thing with Impact Wrestling, if they still are fans of that. And yes, Impact Wrestling still has their fans. People will upload episodes of Impact Wrestling. But here's the one thing about Lucha Underground that I will agree makes it stand out probably better than anything. It's the fact that, yes, you have good in-ring competition. You have good in-ring wrestling as well as storytelling in the matches. I'm not going to deny that. It has compelling, it has twists, and it has things happening that you didn't see or didn't think were going to happen when it first started. I mean, for example, you didn't expect Johnny Mundo, aka John Morrison, to turn heel after his match with Alberto Del Rio, Alberto El Patron. You didn't expect that, and yet here it happened. Because here's a guy that at the beginning of the season, throughout, almost to the halfway point, was not just a babyface, a top babyface, but was against Don Kratos. And yet all of a sudden, Alberto comes in, they have a situation going on, they have a match, he loses, he turns Rudo. And how do you culminate him turning Rudo? You have him culminate turning Rudo at Ultimate Lucha by having him realign and reunite with Melina, who is basically the top, what do they call the female Rudos in Mexico? But they're basically the top heel women's wrestler. That's what you do to basically solidify this guy's a heel now. He's a Rudo. And what is interesting about this, and I agree with anybody I do agree with what people like Deluxe Man, anybody else might say. The people here, from Morrison to Ezekiel Jackson, even Chavo Guerrero Jr., can be more than what they were in WWE, or even what they would have been in TNA. They could be more than that. They could develop their characters. They could be basically what I see here with a lot of people. Either the former Tough Enough competitors, former NXT competitors, RH, TNA. What I see here is a group of men and women who felt like they were probably always held back, depending on the company they were in, that are now able to be let loose and be whatever they want to be. Do what they be the characters that deep down they could be. I think Morrison, Mundo said it best in an interview he did earlier this year. He said something like, there were no strings attached. He wasn't, it basically, unlike his time in WWE, there were no strings attached to him. He doesn't have strings attached. He doesn't have people holding him back. He has that freedom to be and do what he wants to do. And people like it. They like that about this promotion. And again, what they like about it is that right now, as we speak, it is a true alternative to WWE. It is definitely an alternative to what TNA tried to be. I mean, TNA tried to be the alternative, and its first 5-6 years, it did succeed at that. But then all of a sudden, it started to fall off, especially when Hogan and Bischoff came around, as well as Bruce Pritchard, and that all come tumbling down. But yet here's Lucha Underground picking up that slack and saying, hey, TNA, hey, ROH, this is what you should be. This is what you need to be. I mean, I even said it best when I talked about Lucha Underground in a video. I think I did a review of an episode or something. I just talked about it. The one thing I like about it is the fact that when they do the so-called backstage segments, they do it like it's a freaking crime drama. It's like you're watching a wrestling show and then all of a sudden you're watching NCIS. Or you're watching a wrestling show, next thing you know you're watching The Sopranos. That's what it feels like. That's what those backstage segments feel like, because it feels like, yeah, you're watching the same show, but you get this different vibe that now it's not a wrestling show, it's a crime drama. Or it's a mob drama or something like that. To me, it's unbelievable how much the difference in a show shifts. Like you're watching wrestling, now you're watching Sopranos. Or you're watching wrestling, now you're watching True Blood. Or you're watching wrestling, you're watching American Horror Story. Or you're watching wrestling, you're watching this show that's a big hit right now, whatever show it is. Or like How to Get Away with Murder, or trying to get my cat away from my Optimus Prime there. I'm trying to get me and my mom's cat away from the figure. Anyway, like I said, it's like you're watching a different show when these backstage segments are done. And this is something that I have said in that one video I did when I talked about Lucha Underground. And I'll say again, and I think anybody will agree with me, these are the kind of backstage segments that WWE, TNA, heck, even GFW, when they finally get a freaking television deal up and going, and heck, even Paragon Pro Wrestling, which is ending right now, one of its broadcasts on Pop Network, this is the kind of backstage segments you need to do. Because in a way, you're making it more believable. You're making fans feel like they're watching two different shows at once, but not derailing from one. You're not making, basically what Lucha Underground is doing is they're not making anything confusing. They're not confusing fans or anything, because every backstage segment that they do in their crime drama like atmosphere, or mob or mafia drama like atmosphere, relays over into what is done in the ring. Basically, it flows into what happens the next week or that night. You get that feeling. You get that kind of influx that needs to be in a wrestling promotion. And Lucha Underground, and Lucha Underground, in my opinion, is setting the tone for that. And the way, according to now, even though I didn't, now even though I didn't see the ending yet, according to what Deluxe Man and his friend said in their review, apparently the way they end the first season, or the way they end Ultimate Lucha, is you have all these different outside backstage segments happening. You find and you happening all around that gets you pumped and wanting to see the following season, wanting to see what happens next. I mean, you have this whole situation with Vampiro and Pentagon Jr., which really surprised me. I'll admit that, because they didn't. Because yes, there were people that put up the spoilers, but they didn't say anything about what Vampiro did. That was a surprise in itself. But to me, to see this the way I've been seeing it, and to hear what I mean, you got a guy from NXT called The Moth. I don't know if he was just just on this recent NXT or whatever, not NXT but Tough Enough. I don't know if he was recent Tough Enough or not. Here's a guy that's basically involved in a storyline that's going to be continued on with Sexy Star. You got something going on with Drago and Aerostar. It's like, what in the world, is going on here, right? You have Phoenix driving off with his car. You have Don Kratos and Katrina, not Katrina, but whatever this lady's name is, driving off in a car with this big monster that was a mystery the whole time. That you kind of get a glimpse of, according to what Deluxe Man says, and you got all these situations going on, and and to me. This is something that, again, every promotion sorely needs. Every promotion that is struggling, every major promotion sorely needs, even WWE. Because Lucha Underground does something as well during these segments. Now, if a certain individual, wrestler, is either going to go on hiatus because of an injury, or they're going to leave the company and they're going to go someplace else, they don't just do a loser leaves, the temple match, a loser leaves lucha match. No. Sometimes they do it through the backstage segments, because characters actually die in Lucha Underground. Now you might say, well, what does that mean then? What if I see the character show up again at a AAA event or in an independent event? Well, you'll see them, but to Lucha Underground, that character is dead. In other words, they killed off one guy who I guess served sort of like a mentor at the beginning for this girl that was in prison and then got manipulated by Don Kratos. She kills him off. But yet, let's say you see that guy later on at an independent wrestling show and a AAA show in Mexico. He'll still be part of that. But yet, to Lucha Underground, he's done. He's dead. That's it. It's the same way with, let's say, if they decided to kill off Blue Demon Jr. Let's say Blue Demon Jr. is finally going to decide in real life, it's time to hang it up, it's time to go enjoy life, right? How are they going to get rid of Blue Demon Jr.? Probably kill him off. I mean, that is one thing in that you don't see in any other promotion. And to me, these backstage segments, these soprano-like backstage segments, are exactly what every promotion needs to take, needs to take a look and take a page out of. They need to say, hey, if it works for something like Lucha, which is only like a 1 hour, 45 minute to 1 hour show, maybe it could work for us. Maybe it could work for us. And you know what? It can. It can work for them. Because think about it. Let's say you have a guy in WWE whose contract is clearly going to come up and they're not going to resign. And they've already made it well known they might be going to Japan for New Japan. Or they're going to Mexico for AAA. Or they're going to GFW to help springboard that into stardom. Or they might try their hand at ROH, or maybe even TNA if it's still, if it still has some relevance to it. WWE could take that character, whether it's a diva or a superstar, and by using some kind of a soprano-like backstage segment, have them either killed off or banished from the company forever. They could do that. They could do that. And let's say this person wants to use a different name, or use the real name or whatever. You could do that, as well as add in something like, okay, not only are you banished, but you are forbidden to use this name ever again. And there you go. It would work. It would work for WWE to do these kind of things. It would work for TNA to do it as well. Because you know why? It would invest people. You get people invested. Now I know you're thinking, well, wouldn't that confuse people? No, it wouldn't. Because WWE is freaking bigger. It's a global conglomerate. There's no doubt about it. It won't confuse people, but it will get them to tune in. It'll get them to tune in. It'll make them want to see more of what's being presented. It's gonna make them want to see that. Now, as far as Lucha Underground doing 2 parts for Ultima Lucha, I thought it was alright. Because this is something that obviously TNA is doing with their shows, like No Surrender, or had done, and I don't know if they still do, but with shows like the No Surrender and the Lockdown and da-da-da, since they don't put those on pay-per-view anymore. This is something that they do at times, but they don't always do it right. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Lucha Underground, just with the first part being 1 hour and the second part being 2 hours, have done it right. There is no doubt. There is no doubt that they did it right. There's no doubt about that. Now, because basically what they did is they gave you a taste of what Ultimate Lucha. Basically, they whet your appetite with the matches on part 1. Part 2, they gave you the main course. That's what they did. That's what they did. Part 1 was basically like the kind of like the low to mid card structure of a pay-per-view. Part 2 is your main events. That's what they were. Part 2 was saved mostly for the real stories that have been culminating throughout the season. But I also look at Part 2 of Ultimate Lucha as being a test for Lucha Underground. And that test is to see how they could survive with a 2-hour program. Yeah, 2 hours. Now I know some people might say, well, didn't they do 2 hours at the beginning? I don't know if they did or not. But I know that when they did this, any promotion that does something like this, in my opinion, they're testing the waters. They're testing the waters to see how well they can do if they expand to another hour.